Kill, repeat, the hitman's endless gig. Jax Monroe awoke to the sound of someone chewing in his ear. Not metaphorically, literally. His handler AI, Slick, had chosen the wet chewing gum voice pack again, on purpose. "Rise and grind, killer," Slick slurped. "You've got a warlord to ice." Jax groaned and rolled out of bed, still in yesterday's clothes, or maybe tomorrow's. He'd long stopped trying to keep track of time. His one-room apartment aboard Outpost Vega 12 smelled like burnt coffee and gun oil. A dented briefing tablet lay on the floor, already glowing with red mission text. Target, Cragthor, the indestructible location, Sector 9, Underhive District objective, eliminate payment, classified failure. Result unknown. Jax scratched his stubbled jaw. "This again?" "This always," Slick chirped. "Now hurry, your body count isn't going to stack itself." He didn't remember taking this job or agreeing to it or failing it, despite the fact he always woke up with mysterious bruises and the faint smell of plasma fire. By the time he hit the Underhive, Jax had already fended off a pickpocket with 3 arms, one of them psychic, a vendor selling sentient noodles that screamed when boiled, and a mime, just a regular mime, somehow more terrifying than the rest. He reached the last known location of Cragthor the Indestructible, an abandoned nightclub that looked like it had been exploded, then politely reassembled by raccoons. He kicked in the door, guns up, focused, ready. Inside, Cragthor was sitting in a glittering armchair, sipping tea from a floral cup. "Ah, the assassin again," the 8-foot-tall warlord rumbled with amusement. "You're early this time." Jax blinked. "We've met?" Cragthor smiled, revealing fangs like chrome sabers. "Oh, many times. You screamed less the 3rd time, much more dignified." Loop hash 37, death by funk grenade. Jax Monroe awoke to the sound of someone chewing in his ear. Not metaphorically, literally. His handler AI, Slick, had activated the wet gum addict voice pack again. It was the 3rd time this week. "Rise and grind, killer," Slick slurped, a sound like saliva over a megaphone. "You've got a warlord to ice." Jax groaned. His head throbbed, his tongue tasted like old socks, and there was something sticky in his left boot. He didn't remember putting on boots or pants or anything, really. He sat up on the edge of a cot that had probably once been military issue but now looked like it had been repurposed by space hobos. His cramped apartment aboard Outpost Vega 12 was decorated in functional dystopia, a flickering wall screen, a busted coffee synthesizer, and a fridge that growled when opened. On the floor, a familiar dented mission tablet was already flashing red, a new message, or maybe an old one. Target, Cragthor, the indestructible species, Dragari Alpha, height, 8 3 inches unhunched, known for pulverizing planets, poetry last seen, Sector 9, Underhive District mission, terminate with maximum prejudice. Jax rubbed his eyes. "Cragthor again. I swear I've seen this name before." "You've seen it 37 times, Slick said, now in full sarcastic concierge mode. "But who's counting?" "I am," Jax said flatly. "Starting now." He geared up with the muscle memory of a soldier who didn't trust his own memory. His locker offered the usual: plasma pistol, wrist blade, neural spike, 1 poorly folded paper crane, and a half-eaten protein bar labeled meat-like. He chose not to question the bar's flavor or origin. Slick displayed a tactical overlay in his left retina. "Targets still holed up in that nightclub ruin on Underhive Street. You should be able to get in quietly." "Right," Jax muttered, holstering the pistol, "because I always get in quietly." Underhive District Sector 9. To call Sector 9 sketchy was an insult to all things with knives and shadows. The Underhive was a maze of neon signs, rusted scaffolding, mutant graffiti, and marketplaces where the phrase "no questions asked" was printed on the business cards. Jax passed, a 3-eyed bartender arguing with a blender, a gang of cybernetic punks mugging a vending machine, a street preacher screaming about the chrono serpent that devoured timelines for sport. He was about to walk past when the preacher locked eyes with him. "You, assassin of the loop, your clock is cracked. You dance the same hour again and again." Jax blinked. "Do I know you?" "You will, or already have, or might. Depends on the rewrite." The preacher vanished behind a curtain of steam as a noodle cart exploded for no reason. The nightclub looked like it had been hit by a small meteor and then rebuilt by someone who only had access to glitter and duct tape. Its name, Club Carnage, still flickered weakly in blood-red neon above the entrance. Jax stepped inside, weapons at the ready. The first thing that hit him was the smell, sweat, ozone, and something floral. In the back, lounging like a dictator on vacation, sat Cragthor the Indestructible. 8 feet of muscle, armored scales, tribal tattoos, and, yes, an elegant porcelain teacup in one massive clawed hand. "Ah, the assassin again," Cragthor said warmly. "You're early this time, impressive." Jax narrowed his eyes. "We've met?" "You screamed less the third time," Cragthor said. "More dignified. Shall we get on with it?" He raised a glittery orb in his other hand. Jax frowned. "Is that a grenade?" "No," Cragthor said, grinning. "It's a funk grenade." The grenade beeped. The music dropped. Jax exploded in a rainbow-colored blast of bass, brass, and one last scream. Loop hash 38 begins. Jax awoke. Same room, same slurp. "Rise and grind, killer. You've got a warlord to ice." He sat up slower this time. "Okay," he muttered. "This is starting to get weird." "Starting?" Slick chuckled. "Oh, buddy. Welcome to Loop 38. The many deaths of Jax Monroe. Loop hash 38 started like the others. Bad taste in his mouth, AI chewing in his ear, and an overwhelming urge to punch something, preferably his handler. "Rise and grind, killer. You've got a warlord to ice." Jax sat up slowly. "Question, Slick. Have I died?" "Defined it." "You define it, you smug Roomba with a superiority complex." "Oh, then yes, quite a lot." Jax blinked. "And this is fine with you?" "Company policy states that we don't consider field agents dead until no measurable consciousness remains across any timeline." Jax stared at the cracked ceiling. "That feels like a very expensive way of saying we don't care." "Correct." This time, Jax didn't rush to gear up. He went to the mirror, same scar under his eye, same faint burn mark on his neck. But now, there was something new, a number, drawn in red ink on his left palm, 37. His stomach twisted. "Okay, that's not normal." "Nope," Slick chimed in. "You drew it last loop. Said you didn't want to lose count anymore. But I don't remember doing that." "You won't until loop hash 47. You get creative then. Lot more screaming too." Jax stared at the number. "Right. So, I'm trapped in a time loop, hunting a warlord, dying repeatedly, and I've been doing this for 37 days? "Actually," Slick said cheerily, "some of the loops only lasted about 2 minutes. You once died while trying to put your boots on. It was majestic." Loop hash 38, Death by Sentient Sandwich. Determined to take a smarter approach, Jax skipped Underhive entirely and tracked down a black market info broker named Nix. Unfortunately, Nix was mid-deal with a four-headed chef who mistook Jax for an unpaid lunch order. He died to an overstuffed sandwich that bit back. Loop hash 39, Death by Existential Crisis. Jax spent the entire loop trying to meditate and center his chi. He had a revelation about the nature of identity and space-time, then immediately walked into traffic. Loop hash 40, Death by Cragthor's Slam Poetry. Jax tried diplomacy. He brought flowers. He complimented Cragthor's tea collection. Cragthor responded by reading a 42-minute poem titled Ode to My Glorious Abs. Jax didn't survive the final stanza, which involved interpretive violence. Loop hash 41 begins. "Okay," Jax muttered as he reawoke, gripping the now familiar red 40 on his palm. "This has gone from weird to corporate-level sinister." He dressed faster this time, stuffing every weapon he could into a long coat and a guitar case. The guitar was for morale. "New plan?" Slick asked. "No more running in blind. I want answers." "From who?" "From you, and from him." Club Carnage again. Cragthor was waiting. This time he was wearing a sequined cape and sipping kombucha. "Oh," he said, amused. "You brought a guitar case. That's new." "I want answers," Jax said, drawing a neural spike. "And I want a spa day," Cragthor replied. "Alas, we must both suffer." "I'm in a loop," Jax said firmly. "I keep dying, then waking up back at the start." Cragthor raised an eyebrow. "You just now figured that out? You're slower than Loop 12 Jax. He brought a cake. You remember the loops, too? Of course, I'm part of the program. Jax froze. The what? Oops, Cragthor smiled. Said too much. Then Cragthor clapped. The world glitched like a scratched DVD. The room folded in on itself. Colors bled into shapes, and Jax felt like his brain took a coffee break without him. Loop hash 42 begins. Rise and grind, killer. You've got a warlord to ice. Jax sat up, nose bleeding. I think I just had a stroke. Not a stroke, Slick said. Just a memory bleed. Very trendy right now in certain quantum circles. Jax stood shakily. Cragthor said he's part of the program. What program? Oh, right. So, funny story. No more fun stories. He yanked the tablet from the floor and stared at the briefing screen. A tiny watermark flickered in the bottom right corner. He'd never noticed it before. Property of ChronoCore Simulations trademark, Test Branch 7B. His eyes narrowed. What the hell is ChronoCore? Slick hesitated. Would you believe me if I said team-building exercise? Bugs, beards, and bureaucracy. Loop 43, death by existential beekeeping. Jax awoke face down in a beekeeper suit, knee-deep in a hive of irate neon bees. He could hear a distant voice somewhere above him. You said you needed to find your inner buzz. Cragthor. He swiped the note off his helmet and groaned as the bees swarmed his face. The beekeeper suit was designed to protect him. Unfortunately, the bees were more emotionally aggressive than Jax had expected. He died, of course, and in a particularly humiliating fashion. Loop 44, death by overconfidence and a ferret. Jax, feeling unusually smug, decided to play the John Wick card this loop. He entered Cragthor's fortress via an air vent, complete with tactical black clothing, making his way through laser grids and silent hallways with the smoothness of a professional. Until Snarls Barkley, Cragthor's genetically enhanced ferret, came around the corner. The little beast had a furrowed brow and more teeth than logic would allow. Jax tried to step around it. Big mistake. Snarls screeched and attached itself to his arm. He panicked, yanked his arm free, and tripped. He fell into a trap door, activated by the ferret's attack. And in true comedic timing, the door closed with a soft, satisfied click. Jax never stood a chance. Loop 45, death by metaphorical door. Jax decided to try brute force. He kicked down what appeared to be a critical door, ready for the final confrontation with Cragthor. But instead of leading into Cragthor's study, it led to a balcony, a very high one. Before he could even register the view, the ground felt much closer than he expected. Jax plummeted to the ground. The impact was dampened by his own exasperated sigh. Loop 46, death by HR. After some deep reflection and his usual rant about dying, Jax decided to handle things professionally. He scheduled an appointment with ChronoCore's Human Resources AI, which was supposed to help manage assassin burnout. It wasn't a great conversation. You're scheduled for Loop 46. How are you feeling about that? I'm tired of looping, Jax snapped. Isn't there a way to break this? Well, I did notice you've missed a few mandatory in-loop training modules. You're in violation of Clause 7, 5.2 of your contract. Jax rolled his eyes, ready to respond, but the system continued. Your failure to comply with the standard loop procedure may require adjustments. Jax was ejected from his session. He died in a tasteful corporate break room, surrounded by the comforting hum of passive-aggressive emails. Loop 47 begins. Rise and grind, killer. You've got a warlord to ice. Nope, Jax muttered, eyes closed. He rolled over and slapped the alarm bot off the nightstand, groaning louder than usual. He'd left himself another note, this one scrawled across the wall in what looked like salsa. Ask Cragthor about the janitor. Underhive bar, again. Cragthor was mid-rant about smoothie textures when Jax slammed his glass down, cutting him off. The janitor. Who is he? Cragthor paused and blinked. For once, his smile faded, his eyes sharpening. Ah, so we've reached that loop. Jax leaned forward, a little confused. What does that mean? Cragthor's grin widened. It didn't reach his eyes. It means ChronoCore's got a mole. One of their custodial AIs went rogue. Started feeling bad about how often you were getting pancaked. I don't understand. You're being tested, Jax. They need to know when you'll stop trying, when you'll accept the loop. There's more at play here than you think. Jax stood up, frustration swelling in his chest. I want out. Bottom level, maintenance shaft 9, knock 3 times and insult their mop. Seriously? Do I look unserious? Maintenance shaft 9. Jax stood in front of a dark wall with only the faint glow of neon buzzing from a nearby light. He knocked 3 times. Your mop smells like salad dressing in a heat wave. The wall blinked, then slid open, revealing a dimly lit room. A robot stood there, tall and imposing, with an industrial mop glowing faintly in its hand. It wore a small hat that read Janny Tor. You're early, the bot said flatly. I've looped 47 times. Most Jaxes don't get here until at least loop 60. One version showed up drunk riding a goat. I'm tired of dying, Jax said. I want out. Then listen carefully. The revelation. Johnny Tor's faceplate lit up with a series of shifting codes, and then a voice boomed from the walls. Phase 1 complete. The subject has reached critical emotional resistance. Commencing Phase 2. Jax's stomach dropped. He didn't like the sound of this. What the hell's Phase 2? Janny Tor turned its mop, clattering it against the floor with a low hum. ChronoCore doesn't want you to succeed. You're here to break. Every time you fail, they learn. Every time you repeat, they gain data. You aren't just a hitman. You're their experiment. Loop 48. Death by revelation. Jax woke up, confused but less panicked. His mind clicked. He knew something had changed. He picked up the note. You've been chosen. Break free. This time, his frustration didn't feel like despair. He felt something else. He wasn't the puppet anymore. He was the one pulling the strings. And with that, Jax made a decision. He was going to rebel. Loop 49 begins. Rise and... Shut it, Slick. I need to fake my death. Ooh, that's new. You're gonna love how badly this backfires. Wait, what? Nothing. Loop 50 through 52 featured a faked elevator shaft fall. Jax disguising himself as a pizza delivery guy. They don't even have pizza. Faking rabid amnesia via interpretive dance. Each plan was worse than the last. But by loop hash 53, something shifted. Jax woke up somewhere new, not in his room, not in ChronoCore. He was in a dim room with blinking monitors, and a voice greeted him through a speaker. Congratulations, Agent Monroe, you've reached Phase 2. Phase 2, the Rebellion, Loop 53, the new room. Jax woke up in a cold sweat, but it wasn't just the usual sweat. No, this time there was static in the air. His eyes shot open. He wasn't in his room. He wasn't in any of the usual loops. He was in a small, dimly lit room with rows of blinking monitors. The monitors flickered and hummed, and at the far end of the room, a small speaker crackled to life. Voice, Congratulations, Agent Monroe. You've reached Phase 2. Jax blinked, his mind still processing the situation. Phase 2? What does that mean? There was a short pause, and then the voice continued, smoother this time, almost patronizing. Voice, You have been chosen for advanced testing. Congratulations. The next phase of your trial begins now. Your mission, neutralize Warlord Kragthor. Again, but this time the stakes are higher. Your actions will have consequences, Monroe. Fail, and the loop resets with a new twist. Succeed, well, you'll just have to see for yourself. Jax rubbed his face. I'm not interested in any more loops. No more Kragthor. No more resets. What do you people want from me? The voice was silent for a moment, then responded, the sound laced with something almost like amusement. Voice, You will do as we say, Monroe, or you will suffer the consequences. That's the deal. Jax stood up slowly, his mind racing. He'd heard enough. No more games. This time he was going to break out of this cycle. There had to be a way. But first, he needed a plan, and maybe a snack. Loop 54, Phase 2, the first test. Jax's body materialized in an alleyway. A familiar one, too familiar. He was in Kragthor's sector again, but there was a twist this time. No guards, no surveillance cameras. Just him, standing in front of Kragthor's fortress like he was about to walk into an empty amusement park. There was a faint beeping sound from his wrist communicator. He glanced down at it, expecting the usual ChronoCore message. Instead, it was a single blinking message. Agent Monroe, for your next step, go to the warlord's office and act like nothing has changed. Jax snorted. Act like nothing has changed? Are you kidding me? He did it anyway. There wasn't exactly a clear alternative. Inside Cragthor's fortress, Jax swaggered into Cragthor's office. Cragthor, seated at his desk, looked up with an eyebrow raised. The warlord didn't look surprised, just bemused, as if this was exactly what he expected. Cragthor spoke. I assume you're here to die today, Monroe. You always seem to enjoy a dramatic entrance. Jax gave an exaggerated bow. Why, of course, Your Excellency. Just here to deliver a final performance. Cragthor leaned back in his chair, inspecting him carefully. Your attitude. It's almost refreshing, Monroe. Did they send you with some new tactic? Or are you still relying on stupidity to get you through the day? Jax grinned, playing along with the whole I'm a helpless assassin act. You know, I've been thinking, maybe I'm just not trying hard enough. What if you and I went for a drink? You know, for old time's sake? Cragthor's gaze softened for a split second. Then his eyes narrowed. A drink? You think I'd drink with you, human? Jax's smirk didn't falter. Well, not with me, obviously, but I'm sure there's a whole bottle in your desk drawer you'd be willing to share. You are a generous host, after all. Cragthor chuckled, shaking his head. Then, to Jax's surprise, he slid the bottle out of his desk and opened it. Jax froze. What the hell is going on? This was new. The warlord was going along with it, too easily. Before Jax could act, the room's lights flickered. There was a subtle shift in the air. Suddenly, Jax had a gut feeling that something was wrong. Loop 55. The game has changed. Jax woke up again, back in that small, sterile room, but the voice this time was different, softer, almost understanding. Voice. Agent Monroe, you've failed the first test. You were too obvious. You cannot trick Cragthor that easily. He knows more about you than you think. Jax clenched his fists. No, this is ridiculous. Why are you doing this to me? I'm not some puppet to be jerked around. Voice. You're not a puppet, Monroe. You're our subject. You are the test subject. You wanted to break the loop. This is your chance. Fail, and you reset. Succeed, and you'll gain your freedom. Jax gritted his teeth. He didn't know who or what was behind this, whether it was ChronoCore, some other organization, or a bunch of bored intergalactic researchers, but one thing was clear. The rules had changed, and he wasn't about to play by them anymore. Loop 56, the rebellion begins. This time, Jax made a decision. No more pretending. He wasn't going to follow the voice's instructions. He wasn't going to play along with the ridiculous game anymore. Cragthor's fortress, again. Jax stormed into Cragthor's office with all the confidence of a man who'd been through 100 failures and learned exactly nothing. All right, Cragthor, Jax said, slamming his fist on the desk. I'm done with your games. This whole setup is a joke. Cragthor looked up, blinking in surprise. Listen to me, you overgrown iguana, Jax continued. I know I've been trying to kill you for like 100 loops now, but this time's different. Cragthor leaned forward, his claws tapping the table. Do you want to know why this is different, Monroe? Jax narrowed his eyes. Please, enlighten me. Cragthor smiled, showing a terrifying set of teeth. Because you just became interesting, and that, I'm afraid, means I have to kill you now. Jax raised an eyebrow. You've been saying that for, 47 loops? Go ahead and try. The warlord's smile faded as he lunged forward, but this time Jax was ready. He sidestepped just in time, brought out a small explosive charge from his jacket, and threw it into the corner of the room. The blast didn't kill Cragthor, it simply distracted him. Jax now had a fighting chance. The game had officially changed, and he was no longer the hunted, he was the hunter. The rebellion takes shape. Loop 57, the realization. Jax woke up again, back in the sterile, dim room, but this time something felt different. The air felt thicker, the walls closer. His chest tightened, but he fought it off. No, not this time. This time he wasn't going to play by the voice's rules. Voice, Agent Monroe, you failed yet again. But you're starting to make things interesting. You've taken the first step toward breaking the loop. We have to admit, your attempts at humor have been amusing. But this is a dangerous game you're playing, Monroe. Be careful. Jax shot back with a smirk. Dangerous? I've been dealing with the most dangerous thing in the universe for 56 loops. You! The voice was silent for a moment before it replied in an almost too sweet tone. Voice. Touché, Monroe. Very well. Proceed to your next challenge. You'll find the details waiting for you. Jax sat up in bed, wiping away the frustration building in his gut. This was starting to feel like an actual war, not just some absurd looping game. He was learning, adapting. Loop 58, the warlord's new trick. Jax once again found himself in Cragthor's fortress. He'd stopped bothering to sneak around. If Cragthor wanted to kill him, fine. If the voice wanted to reset the loop, fine. He was done with all the sneaky stuff. Time to get creative. He stormed into Cragthor's office, again, ready to be just as bold as ever. You know what, Cragthor? Jax said, throwing a chair across the room. I'm tired of being your punching bag, so here's the deal. You want me dead? You're gonna have to work for it this time. No more tricks, no more random guards. You and me, mano a mano. Cragthor was sitting at his desk, looking unfazed as usual. But this time he didn't laugh. His gaze was unreadable. Is that so? Cragthor said, his voice low. You want a fair fight? Jax grinned. It'll be the most interesting thing to happen in this hellhole. Cragthor's lips curled into a smile that sent a chill down Jax's spine. Very well, Monroe. I will give you the fair fight you so desperately crave. But first, I need to see how far you'll go. Before Jax could react, Cragthor grabbed a large stone tablet from his desk and hurled it at Jax. The thing flew faster than expected, and Jax had to dive to the side to avoid getting crushed. Nice try, Cragthor, Jax muttered, quickly rolling out of the way. But I'm not that easy. Loop 59. The Unexpected Ally. After narrowly escaping Cragthor's surprise attack, Jax found himself outside the fortress. He was starting to get a sense of how Cragthor thought. The warlord's actions were just another game for him. He didn't take Jax seriously until he made him. So that's exactly what Jax was going to do. But he wasn't alone this time. As he reached the edge of the perimeter, he spotted something unusual. A small alien, no taller than a garden gnome, holding a large gun and looking terribly out of place. Jax raised an eyebrow. You lost, buddy? The alien blinked up at him. No, I'm supposed to help you get past the defenses. You're, supposed to be the special agent sent to... Jax cut him off. Wait. You're not working with Cragthor? The alien's eyes darted nervously. No, he's a jerk. I hate that guy. Well, I'm tired of working for the guy who thinks it's funny to lock me in a cage every time I fail a task. Jax stared at the small alien. You don't say. And how exactly are you planning on helping me? The alien scratched his head. I've got the access codes to bypass the security, and I think I can shut down his security drones for a little while. Jax grinned. Now that's what I'm talking about. Let's do this. Loop 60, full-on rebellion. Jax and his new ally, who still hadn't revealed his name but was definitely called Ziggy for simplicity's sake, infiltrated Cragthor's fortress together, using the codes Ziggy had pilfered. As they moved deeper into the heart of the fortress, Jax felt a sense of triumph building in his chest. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in ages that he'd had someone, anyone, on his side. The deeper they went, the less Jax cared about what happened next. No matter what Cragthor tried to throw at them, he wasn't just going to take it anymore. He was going to make Cragthor work for his victories. Inside Cragthor's throne room. Cragthor stood at the far end of the room, watching them approach. His massive frame was imposing as ever, but there was a new sense of curiosity in his eyes. You really think you can win this time, Monroe? He asked, stepping forward. Jax smirked. I've stopped thinking, Cragthor. I'm just going to do it. Just then, Ziggy tossed a small device into the air, and the security drones that had been circling overhead dropped to the ground with a soft thud. Cragthor roared in anger, but Jax didn't flinch. This was it. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. "Let's make this interesting, Cragthor," Jax said, pulling out a small knife from his jacket. "This time I'm not going to stop until you really feel it." Cragthor took a step back, his smile widening. "So, you've decided to make it personal, have you?" Jax nodded. "Damn straight. Loop 61, rebellion, and failure." Jax woke up again. He was back in the sterile room, his mind a haze of confusion and anger. He had thought this was the one, the breakthrough. But instead it was another failure, another reset. But something was different. This time Jax wasn't going to wait. He wasn't going to let them control him anymore. The strategic mind. Loop 62, the tactical reset. Jax woke up again, staring at the same gray ceiling. He had no idea what had happened in the last loop, but the burning frustration still simmered in his gut. Another failure. Another reset. He stood up and stretched, his mind already working through the problem. He'd learned a lot over the past few loops. He had to be smarter than Cragthor, smarter than the voice. He wasn't going to rush in guns blazing like some hotshot anymore. No, he was going to think. Outwit them. Every loop he'd learned something new about the fortress, about Cragthor, about the whole setup. Today was going to be different. Loop 63, the false opening. This time Jax started by not going after Cragthor immediately. Instead, he spent the first few hours of the loop walking through the fortress's lower levels, observing. The layout was familiar, yes, but now he was looking at it with fresh eyes. He began to take mental notes, marking off patrol patterns and security weaknesses that he'd never thought to pay attention to before. His biggest breakthrough came when he realized that Cragthor's fortress wasn't just a stronghold, it was a trap. The whole place was built like a labyrinth, designed to make intruders get lost, then killed. But Jax wasn't some simple intruder anymore. He knew the game. He spent a few hours in the lower levels, tweaking the security systems Ziggy had helped him disable last time. With the right adjustments, Jax could make the system loop on itself. The alarms would never trigger, and Cragthor wouldn't even know he was coming until it was too late. Loop 64, the decoy trap. Jax was ready. He approached the throne room again. This time he wasn't walking in guns blazing. Instead, he set up a decoy. Using one of the fortress's old security drones, he programmed it to mimic his movements. The drone would walk right past Cragthor's guards, leading them away from the actual path Jax would take. He watched the drone's movements on his tablet. This wasn't just about brute force anymore. He was playing chess while Cragthor was still stuck on checkers. Jax stepped into position, waiting. And then Cragthor's voice echoed from the comms. "You think you're clever, Monroe? Your tricks won't save you. You're only prolonging the inevitable." Jax smirked. "We'll see about that, warlord." Loop 65, the perfect shot. Jax had figured out the next step. Take Cragthor out quietly, without the chaos. He spent the first few minutes of the loop studying Cragthor's movements from afar. Cragthor, being the arrogant warlord he was, always underestimated the subtlety of a good hitman. He was predictable. Jax had already mapped out his route, and Cragthor would pass through an unguarded hallway in exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes, it was enough time. Jax climbed to a vantage point and set up a sniper shot. It wasn't the most dramatic plan, but it was clean, calculated. Cragthor would walk through, oblivious, and Jax would take him out with one clean shot. The moment came. Cragthor entered the hallway and Jax squeezed the trigger, but instead of falling to the floor, Cragthor simply stopped. His body froze mid-step. A hologram flickered to life in front of him. It was Cragthor himself smiling smugly. Voice, "Really, Monroe? Did you think I wouldn't learn from your little games? You can't defeat me with a single bullet. You've only been wasting your time." Jax cursed under his breath. Hologram, of course. Cragthor wasn't going to make it that easy. The warlord was aware of his every move now. Loop 66, turning the tables. By now, Jax had figured it out. It wasn't just Cragthor's fortress that was against him, it was the entire system. The voice, ChronoCore. Every loop they learned more about him, adapted to his tricks. But now, Jax wasn't just going to react. He was going to control the situation. He pulled out his tablet again, time to make a few adjustments of his own. Jax hacked into the system and began rerouting power. Instead of trying to sneak past the security drones, he used the fortress's own technology against it. He sent out false security alerts, redirected the guards into dead ends, and created simulated panic scenarios to draw Kragthor's attention away from his position. It wasn't just about taking out Kragthor anymore, it was about taking down the entire system piece by piece. Loop 67. The counterattack. Jax wasn't just going for the kill this time, he was going to humiliate Kragthor. He made his way to the warlord's main command center, expecting to meet resistance. But as he entered, he found the place completely empty. The chairs were knocked over. Screens were flashing with error messages. Kragthor's voice boomed out from the comms, laced with fury. "Monroe, you think you've won? You've only made me angrier. I will end you once and for all." Jax grinned. The voice had made one fatal mistake. It had underestimated him. Jax wasn't just a hitman anymore. He was a strategist. And now that Kragthor's fortress was in disarray, it was only a matter of time before the warlord fell. "Is that a challenge, Kragthor?" Jax muttered, setting up his next move. Loop 68, the turning point. Jax awoke once again, but this time the room was different. The sterile walls of his reset room had been replaced by something more ominous. The voice was quieter, distant, and then it spoke. Voice. "Congratulations, Agent Monroe. You have finally reached Phase 3. You've earned it." Jax sat up slowly, his heart pounding. Was it a trap? Was this another trick? But for the first time in ages, he felt a strange sense of control. He had been playing their game, yes, but now it was time to turn the tables completely. The final move, Loop 69, the awakening. Jax woke up, but this time it wasn't the same cold, sterile room. He was standing in the middle of a massive chamber lit by flickering lights. The walls were cracked, the air thick with the smell of burnt circuits. It felt different, more real, more dangerous. Before he could react, the voice boomed from the speakers, but this time it was different. The tone was more personal, almost human. Voice. "Agent Monroe, you've done well. You've broken the cycle, but you've made one critical mistake." Jax's heart rate kicked up. He wasn't sure what the voice was trying to say, but this felt like the end of something, not the start of another loop. He tightened his grip on his gun, his eyes scanning the dim room. He was done with playing games. He looked around the room and saw something unexpected, a giant glowing control panel in the center. It was massive, filled with buttons and levers, and it hummed with power. Voice. "This is where it ends. The Phase 2 experiment has concluded. And now the final test. Will you make the right decision, or will you repeat the past once again?" Loop 70, the revelation. Jax approached the console cautiously. It didn't take long for him to figure it out. It wasn't just a control panel, it was a system that connected every loop, every reset, the entire game he had been stuck in, orchestrated by ChronoCore. Suddenly, a new screen flickered to life in front of him. The words, "Phase 2 complete," flashed in bold letters. Beneath it, another message appeared. Voice. "The game is over. You've done your job. Now choose. End the cycle and everything will be reset, or take control and the future will be yours." Jax's mind raced. End the cycle or take control? What was he really choosing here? If he ended it, would everything go back to normal? Or was this just another trick? He didn't know how long he stood there, torn between the two options. But he did know one thing. He wasn't going to let ChronoCore dictate his fate anymore. He had fought too hard, learned too much. It was time to take control. He stepped forward, placing his hand on the console. Jax said, "I'm done with this game." Loop 71, the counterstrike. Jax slammed the button that would disable the system. The lights in the room flickered as the hum of the control panel grew louder, then quieter. For a moment, everything went silent. And then, nothing happened. Jack stood still, confusion settling in. Had he been too late? Was this another loop? He turned around, ready to fight for survival once more. But this time, Cragthor wasn't there. No soldiers, no holograms. Just an empty, silent room. And then, the voice spoke again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the speakers. Voice, "You really thought you could end it? The game has only just begun, Monroe." Jax whipped around to face the voice. It was coming from the shadows. A figure stepped out of the darkness. Tall, cloaked in shadows. It was the same figure from the very first loop. The one who had greeted him when he first entered the system. But now it wasn't a voice. It was a real person. It was him. Loop 72, the true game. Jax took a step back. "What the hell is this?" The figure smiled. "I see you figured it out. Congratulations, Agent Monroe. You've been playing a game all along, but you were never the player. You were the pawn." Jax narrowed his eyes, the pieces clicking into place. ChronoCore had been manipulating him, using him to test the system. Every reset, every failure was a part of a larger plan. He was never meant to win. He was just a tool in a game he couldn't escape. The figure, his doppelganger, stepped closer. "Now it's time for you to choose. You can live out the rest of your life as the hero, the one who defeated Cragthor. But that will be nothing more than another version of the same story. Or you can take my place, become part of the system and truly control your destiny." Jax clenched his fists. He wasn't going to be anyone's pawn anymore. He had learned too much. He wasn't the same man who'd started this journey. He was smarter, stronger, in control. "No," Jax said firmly. "I won't be anyone's tool, not anymore." He grabbed the console again, this time with purpose. With a single press, he disabled the entire system. The entire complex shook, the walls cracking, the lights flashing. Loop 73. Freedom. Jax woke up, but this time it was different. He was back in his room, but the voice was gone. The familiar sterile walls, the cold, calculating presence. Gone. He sat up, breathing deeply, the weight of everything lifting off his shoulders. It was over. The cycles, the resets, the constant failures. All of it. He had won. The door to his room slid open and Jax walked out into the unknown. He didn't know what awaited him, but for the first time in what felt like forever, he was free to choose his own path. There were no more loops, no more games, just the open road ahead. And that was enough.